Hello everyone. Today, I will recap the content of the movie Captain Phillips. This movie is based on a true story about a famous cargo ship robbery. The 17,000-ton U.S. cargo ship was hijacked in the waters off Somalia, where the pirates demanded a ransom of $10 million. This was the first time in nearly 200 years that a U.S. ship had been threatened by pirates. To handle this situation, the U.S. did not hesitate to mobilize a warship. Phillips was the captain of a shipping company, with more than 25 years of experience in the profession and solid professional skills. One day in 2009, Phillips was assigned to steer the Alabama from Oman to Kenya. According to the company's plan, the ship had to pass through Somalia waters, which were known to have a high potential for pirate activity. As an international cargo ship, it would not be equipped with weapons for self-defense. Phillips was well aware of this danger, so he was very cautious. As soon as he boarded the ship, he confirmed the route with the first mate and thoroughly checked the anti-piracy safety equipment. The cargo was quickly loaded onto the ship. As the vessel left port and headed out to sea, potential danger loomed. On the impoverished coast of Somalia, plagued by prolonged civil wars and constant famine, piracy had become a serious problem. In this region, guns and ammunition are very easy to buy. With an average annual income of only about $600, survival is a challenge for many people. Successfully hijacking a ship can yield more than $30,000 per person, so it is no wonder that piracy is seen by some as a noble profession. Looking at the pirate commander, one could see the stark realities of his existence. Although his face was gaunt from hunger, he was armed with numerous guns and ammunition. Today, this pirate crew decided to set sail in search of their next unlucky target. Soon after, a selection of members was made by a commander named Muse, attracted the attention of notorious pirates. They equipped themselves with rudimentary equipment, ranging from humble boats to advanced weaponry. The pirates were usually led by a village chief who controlled the mothership, along with 8 villagers, while they shared 2 small boats to carry out the robbery. The villagers were eager to take to the sea. Although most of the spoils would go to the village chief, even a small amount of money could change their lives. Muse, one of the captains of the small boats, quickly assembled the pirate team and set out with the mother ship into Somalia waters in search of targets. While out at sea, the pirate group had yet to find their main target, as the cargo ships were moving too closely together, making an attack difficult. After a discussion, they suddenly spotted a retreating ship on the radar. It was Captain Phillips's vessel. Phillips had not yet realized the danger. However, to ensure safety, the next morning he organized a drill for the crew to prepare for a possible incident. Assuming that 2 armed men were approaching the ship, the crew used fire hoses connected to sprinklers around the ship and high-power pumps to create strong water pressure to repel the small boats. Phillips had just conducted the drill when he suddenly noticed 2 targets on the radar. Using binoculars, he confirmed that they were indeed 2 small boats approaching. He was unsure whether they were friend or foe, so he immediately informed the crew to take their positions, emphasizing that this was not a drill. He turned the ship 5 degrees to the left to check if the 2 small boats were following them. Notably, the 2 boats also adjusted their course. Phillips immediately accelerated the ship and contacted the U.S. Maritime Emergency Response Center, but received no response. He then reached out to the British Commercial Rescue Organization, but the staff assumed they were just fishermen and advised Phillips to proceed with emergency response procedures. They assured him they would report to their superiors before making a decision regarding a rescue. In this situation, Phillips felt that calling without results was worse than not calling at all. Noticing that the ship was approaching at only 2 miles away, Muse and his crew were excited by its massive size. Phillips decided to speed up, trying to create ways to hinder the pirates. At the same time, he made a fake phone call to request support from the U.S. Navy, claiming to be an officer and lying that an armed helicopter was on the way. Eventually, Phillips correctly deduced that the pirates were using radio signals stolen from his ship. It turns out that Captain Phillips quickly devised a plan to scare off the enemy. Indeed, a pirate ship heard it, panicked, and turned around to flee. Even the mothership was frightened and did not dare to approach, for fear of being attacked by the Navy. Meanwhile, Muse was determined to move forward, regardless of the dangers. Realizing that there was still a ship closely pursuing them, Phillips had to accelerate to the maximum and change direction to create large waves to hinder Muse's ship. Of course, their modern ship easily left Muse's vessel far behind. Although it is not as fast as high-speed vessels, Alabama still generated large waves that could sink a small ship. At that moment, the pirate ship's engine lost control and failed. Although Muse was reluctant, he was forced to retreat, which saved Captain Phillips from a robbery. In the evening, Captain Phillips gathered everyone together and praised them for their quick response that day. However, one of the crew members was worried that the pirates might attack again. On the contrary, Captain Phillips stated that if they encountered pirates the next day, they would continue to implement the same measures as before. If the pirates boarded the ship, they just needed to close and lock the doors. However, one of the crew members was dissatisfied because he believed they were not paid enough to face the pirates and suggested taking a longer detour to avoid them. Phillips did not agree with this proposal, because he wanted the shipment to be transported as quickly as possible. But the danger was not over. If the pirates repaired their ship, they would return. Sure enough, Muse returned to the mothership and immediately repaired the damaged engine. There was a captain standing there, scolding and taunting Muse. After a while of patience, Muse could not take it anymore and hit him on the head with a screwdriver. The people around were frightened and stood still. In fact, in the pirate world, the strong can always overpower the weak. Muse took the captain's engine and attached it to his own ship. The next morning, the pirates continued to follow Phillips's ship. He quickly spotted them and immediately pressed the alarm. Phillips ordered the crew to remove all speed restrictions, allowing the ship to run at full power, while steering left and right to create large waves. However, Muse's ship had been equipped with an additional engine, enabling him to chase the cargo ship vigorously, confident that this time he would have a successful robbery. Phillips contacted the naval switchboard for help, but they only told him to wait. Meanwhile, the pirates were very cunning, even knowing how to use walkie-talkies to impersonate the Somali Coast Guard in an attempt to force the ship to stop. But upon closer inspection, it was clear that these people did not resemble the Coast Guard at all. Phillips did not believe this nonsense. At this point, the power of their weapons truly took over. They began shooting, forcing everyone to lie down. Phillips quickly assigned the sailors to adjust the water cannons around the ship to prevent the pirates from approaching. Seeing that Phillips was not easily fooled, the pirates immediately moved closer to the ship, despite the water cannons surrounding it. Under heavy fire, Phillips and his colleagues could only lie still to hide. During this time, the pirates attempted to board the ship from various sides. At that moment, the ship's water valve number 7 broke, creating a gap that they could exploit. Realizing this, Phillips immediately sent someone to repair it. He tried to fire flares at the pirate ship, but the long distance and large waves caused him to miss. The flares were not as powerful as gun. At that time, the pirates were shooting and trying to board the ship. The first mate could not stick his head out to repair the valve, because bullets were flying continuously toward him. Faced with the strength of the pirate group, the first mate was forced to flee. He had no choice but to retreat and lead the crew to hide under the ship's turbine. With no more obstacles, the pirates continued to build ladders to board the ship. Seeing this, the captain steered the ship to swerve left and right to block them. Although they had some difficulty climbing up, that did not stop them from committing the crime. They even abandoned the small vessel and headed toward the captain's location. Realizing that the situation was dire, Phillips only had time to tell the crew to quickly stop the ship's engine and then immediately escape, avoiding being taken hostage. The pirates quickly rushed into the cockpit and threatened Phillips with guns. They forced everyone into a corner. Then, Muse stepped forward to speak with the captain calmly, thanks to his good English skills. Muse told the captain that he only wanted to make money, so he wouldn't harm anyone if they cooperated. When they learned that this was an American ship, the entire group was pleased. Phillips announced that there was only $30,000 in the ship's safe, and told them to take the money and leave peacefully. However, he had misjudged Muse's character. This guy's goal is to kidnap everyone and demand millions in ransom. At that moment, the ship suddenly stopped. A crew had turned off all the engine systems. Under Phillips's orders, all the crew members had to hide in the turbine room. Phillips lied, claiming he needed to speed up because they were chasing him too hard, so that the engine system was facing serious problems. Muse looked at the control panel and realized that this was not his small boat. Though he didn't know much about these devices, Muse couldn't help but think of others playing tricks. Phillips stated that he did not know the location of the crew either. The pirates used loudspeakers to threaten the crew. They declared that if the crew did not appear immediately, they would kill one person every minute. Then one pirate put a gun to another's head, forcing Phillips to reveal the location of the crew. The situation was very tense. Phillips had to calm the pirates, asserting that their intention was only to steal, not to cause harm. He immediately agreed but tactfully passed the message to the crew, and signaled them to turn off all electrical equipment. Muse and his accomplices then forced Phillips to lead them in inspecting the ship. Muse saw the ship's map in the corridor. Suspecting that the ship's engine might have a problem, he guessed that the sailors could have done something in the turbine room. He insisted that Phillips take them down there, but Phillips quickly said that the lower deck was very hot and that he wanted to go to the dining room to get water. In fact, he was trying to coordinate with the sailors to turn off the power, but he didn't expect that they were also getting water in the galley. When he heard someone approaching, he immediately hid, knowing that someone was nearby. While getting water, he reminded a pirate who wasn't wearing sails to be careful, signaling to the crew. The first mate quickly understood the signal, and as the three men left, he ordered the crew to place pieces of glass in front of the turbine doors. Sure enough, the barefoot pirate stepped on the glass, cutting his foot. Phillips immediately instructed everyone to return to the wheelhouse, where the first aid kit was located. However, Muse was very cunning. He merely wanted to check on the situation, and the injured pirate endured the pain to investigate. At the same time, each crew member tried to hide, while the ship suddenly went dark when the lights in the turbine cabin went out. Before the pirates entered, a crew sneaked out and seized the opportunity to cut the circuit breaker, causing the entire ship to lose power. This left everyone unable to see anything. Phillips urged them to go back. Muse could not accept this, and felt angry at being manipulated by Phillips. He immediately ordered one of his companions to escort Phillips back, while Muse himself stayed behind to continue the investigation. Phillips had not gone far when the concealed crew members suddenly rushed out like a disturbed beehive, quickly apprehending him. They retrieved Muse's weapon and restrained him. Then, they called up to request an exchange. Recognizing the Muse's voice, the group was forced to give in. At that point, both sides were holding hostages. After agreeing on the terms of the exchange, the pirates accepted $30,000 from the safe, but had to leave the ship in a lifeboat. The two sides faced off on deck in a tense atmosphere. A pirate also wanted Phillips to board the lifeboat as a hostage. With rifles in hand, the pirates had the upper hand in the negotiations, either to accept their demands or risk the lives of everyone else. Eventually, Phillips agreed and sailed with the pirates towards Somalia. Phillips had just entered when Muse's accomplices knocked him out. At that moment, the lifeboat fell into the sea before the crew could react. Muse had no intention of giving up, and they were preparing to take Phillips back to Somalia to demand a ransom. Phillips had fallen into the hands of pirates, so the crew immediately contacted the Maritime Emergency Response Center. The situation was quickly reported to the U.S. Navy, which sent the nearest warship to pursue. After the cargo ship received the response, it immediately chased after the lifeboat to avoid losing sight of it. Meanwhile, the pirates had also started chatting and asked each other about their main jobs. Phillips said that he is the captain of a cargo ship for the poor people in Africa. Muse replied that the rich always want to help the Somalia people, while white people come to Africa to exploit their resources, catch their fish, and then just give them a few loaves of bread. Seeing that the boy was seriously injured, Phillips offered to help bandage him, and Muse agreed. After being cared for by Phillips, the boy began to treat him well. He even brought water to him. However, the ship moves at slow speed. Furthermore, they were unable to contact the mothership, which made everyone even more restless and anxious. The next day, they finally contacted the mothership. The mothership asked them to return Captain Phillips, stating that their attack on the cargo ship had been a big mistake. This made the pirates even more uneasy. In response, Muse ignored his boss's words and kept Phillips as a hostage. At this time, U.S. drones caught up. The U.S. ordered the Navy to devise a rescue plan. The White House granted supreme authority, trying to persuade the pirates. If that didn't work, they would hand the situation over to the warship, ensuring that Phillips was not taken to Somalia. At the same time, a U.S. Navy squad departed from the base at night. When the U.S. warship approached the lifeboat, the captain began to contact Muse to negotiate. Muse demanded a $10 million ransom. To convince the pirates, the Navy could only use the excuse of gathering money to buy time. Meanwhile, a Navy squad escorted the cargo ship to continue on its way, while the warship would take care of the pirates. When it was light, the Navy sent two small boats under the pretext of bringing supplies near the pirate area. They took this opportunity to observe the situation and confirm whether Phillips was still alive. Phillips understood that if the Navy arrived, they would never have a chance to negotiate. He sent a signal to the Navy to let them know his location to support the rescue operation. Meanwhile, the pirates were worried about the chaotic situation around them. One pirate opened fire to protect Phillips, forcing the Navy ship to immediately leave the area. The rescue operation became a stalemate. Not long after, a U.S. warship also arrived. Phillips saw the warship, but was not satisfied with the Navy's handling of the situation, because he was worried that they might kill the hostage by mistake, and they would rather die than let the ship return to Somalia. He tried to convince Muse to surrender, but he was still dreaming of wealth, and refused to give up this huge sum of money. It seemed impossible to persuade them to surrender. To escape danger, Phillips needed to find a way to save himself. At night, the U.S. Navy quietly approached by parachute. When the pirates were sleeping, Phillips said he needed to go to the toilet. As soon as he opened the boat door, he quickly seized a pirate to push the guard into the sea and jumped in, trying to swim toward the warship. However, in the dense darkness, although the Navy noticed the chaos, they still could not distinguish who was the enemy and who was the friend. Muse fired warning shots at Phillips, but it was ineffective. The Navy heard the gunshots and became more hesitant, only daring to fire flares as a warning. Although the Navy could clearly see the situation at sea, the pirates also determined Phillips's location. Muse jumped into the water to capture Phillips, while Phillips angered them by trying to escape. The angry pirate beat Phillips. Muse immediately intervened, as Phillips was the pirates' last hope. Muse pointed a gun at Phillips's head, dragged him off the boat, and forced the Navy helicopter to retreat. Not long before, the Navy had received news of the pirates. To reassure them, the Navy called the pirates by name and falsely claimed that their superiors had agreed to pay the ransom. Now, the ransom was complete, and the village elder was on his way, but the transaction had to be done in secret. The pirates sent a representative to negotiate. Additionally, the fuel on the lifeboat was running low, and a storm was approaching. They suggested that the warship tow the lifeboat away from danger. This suggestion reassured Muse, although his crewmates warned him that it might be a trap. However, Muse decided to take the risk, as this might be the group's only chance of survival. Phillips knew that the Navy gunner could shoot at any moment, while Muse still believed that after taking the money, he could leave safely. Phillips asked why Muse didn't just take the $30,000 and leave instead of taking such a significant risk. Muse lamented that there was a boss above them, and if he only took that much money, he wouldn't receive a share. Phillips continued to ask Muse if there were any other options besides being a pirate. Muse said that in America, there might be many options for living, but in his country, this was the only way to survive. At that moment, two Navy ships approached the lifeboat. One took the pirate back to the warship for negotiations, while the other, as it pulled a rope to the lifeboat, installed listening devices outside the boat. When the Navy confirmed that Phillips was still alive, they gave him a set of clothes and reminded him to return to his post, emphasizing that he was not to leave. Phillips realized that the bright yellow clothes were meant to help him distinguish himself from the pirates. The naval attack was about to begin, and as soon as Muse was brought aboard the warship, he was immediately placed under strict control. He repeatedly asked about the village elder's location, but the soldiers only replied that he was coming soon. At this point, the warships began shining strong lights on the lifeboats, the purpose being to light the way, but actually to make it easier for the gunners to see their targets. The blinding light made it impossible for the pirates to observe their surroundings. 3 gunners were positioned at the end of the deck, aiming their guns at the lifeboats, and waiting for the right moment to shoot the 3 pirates simultaneously. The warship accelerated, creating huge waves that made the lifeboats sway. If the Navy was defeated, Phillips would have a hard time preserving his life. While the pirates were distracted, he picked up a pen from the ground to write a will, but it was snatched away by an impulsive person. Phillips could no longer hold back and immediately jumped into a fight with him. The situation on the ship became chaotic. The Navy heard the scuffle, and while looking for an opportunity to attack, they warned the pirates not to harm the hostage on the lifeboat. On the lifeboat, Phillips was quickly tied up and blindfolded. If Muse wasn't there, his gang would lose control. Furthermore, he realized that Muse had been gone for a long time without any news, which definitely showed that this was a trap. He was cornered, and he would likely die with Phillips. The Navy had discovered that Phillips was in danger, but at the moment, there were only 2 gunmen aiming at the target. The pirate who was pointing his gun at Phillips suddenly entered the sight of the 3rd gunner. The Navy ordered the immediate cessation of the lifeboat to be carried. 3 targets were identified, and the captain directed the shooting of 3 pirates. Phillips was safely rescued and was took to the warship. Muse was immediately tied up. Muse was brought back to the United States for trial and sentenced to 33 years in prison. Currently, this pirate is still in prison. Thus, all risks have been resolved. Although Phillips was not in danger of death, this experience made even an experienced captain like him cry. The movie ends here. Surely you are familiar with Somali pirates. They are considered the most reckless people in the world. The character Muse in the movie is a typical example, both pitiful and blameworthy. No one wants to be born in a country in a state of civil war like that, where hunger and looting corrupt people. Deep in Muse's heart is a simple person, like a fisherman. Although he is a pirate, He does not want to hurt others in vain. His lifelong dream is to go to America, own a car, and have a peaceful life. However, the way he chooses to realize the dream is wrong. When Muse arrives in America, the first thing he encounters is prison. Is there any other way to escape Somalia? The people here have almost no choice. They can only try to survive every day. If you find the content good, please give me a like and leave a comment about your feelings about this movie. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to update the latest movie recap from me. See you again.